It's been a very long time since I've wanted to try a daily trainer from Under Armour, but in 2025, Under Armour is bringing supercritical foam and a clean, minimalistic design to the daily training space. This is the Sonic 7, and it's time to take it for a run. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today, I'm gonna tell you guys all about the Under Armour Sonic 7. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Under Armour sent to me for the purpose of review, so I didn't have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Sonic 7. And let's start with the specs. This is a 26mm stack height shoe in the heel with an 8mm drop, giving us 18mm of stack height in the forefoot. And in this shoe, there's only one material. There is a supercritical foam. There's no plate, there's no torsion bar, and there's no other kind of like hidden stability elements built into the shoe. It's a very straightforward piece of supercritical foam. Now we do have some guide rails on the sides of the shoe to kind of create a little bit of a seat for your foot to sit inside in order to create some ankle stability, but this supercritical foam that they use is very soft, so there isn't a lot of support that these sidewalls are providing. For those of you who need a little bit more guidance and a little bit more stability in your shoe, I'm not sure if these sidewalls are really going to do it. But there is a good amount of structure in this heel cup. It's not the most obtrusive heel cup I've ever seen, but there is a decent amount of structure in here. What I do appreciate though is that they didn't go crazy with the padding inside the shoe. There is a very restrained amount of padding along the collar and along this Achilles flare. It all feels very comfortable. The tongue is not gusseted, but it is a very thin piece of soft foam here, which feels really fantastic to the touch. And the rest of this Checkered upper is very minimalistic. It's very clean. There's no logos, there's no overlays. It's a very simple, streamlined silhouette. On the outsole, there is a very good amount of rubber coverage. There are a lot of cutouts in this rubber though to help keep things nice and flexible, and it won't restrain this supercritical foam too much. The rubber on the outsole is pretty thick, and there's some grooves that are cut in here. I don't know if those grooves were necessary. Maybe those were some sort of an attempt to cut weight, but they do happen to be a little bit of a magnet for tiny little pieces of gravel if you're running on some softer surfaces. But otherwise, I do really like the design of this outsole, and I think it's going to provide a great deal of durability, which I think is going to be a very important selling feature for this shoe. Altogether, this shoe comes in at a pretty respectable weight, 9.1 ounces or 257 grams. Now that we've talked about what this shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it's like on the road. The Under Armour Sonic 7 is a respectable daily trainer from a brand that hasn't always been fully committed to the performance running space. But this year they've delivered an actual legitimate daily training option. The supercritical foam here is really nice and squishy. It's very soft, and the whole package is very neutral. And I think the way that this shoe is set up, it makes it really great for easy running of about 60 minutes or less. There's a little bit of pace versatility in here too, because the shoe is pretty straightforward, it's pretty lightweight, and it's pretty nimble. It's not like super wide in the footprint. But for me personally, most of my easy runs are a little bit longer than an hour. So for some of my shorter easy runs, I feel like this could be a really fun option to pick up. Or if I needed to find a good treadmill shoe, I feel like this is going to be a lot of fun. It's also a pretty comfy casual shoe as well if you wanted to just wear this around as part of your daily life. I think one of the great things about this shoe is that it's very clean on the side. There aren't a lot of logos. Sometimes I really love it when a running shoe looks like a running shoe. I really want to broadcast that fact. Other times I want to wear a shoe that is a little bit more incognito, and because there isn't a giant logo on the side of this shoe, not that I can think of any reason why you wouldn't want to broadcast a giant Under Armour logo, but in case you don't, this shoe definitely makes it a little bit easier to go incognito. Now, the thing that I thought about most when I was testing this shoe is that the foam, the supercritical foam that's in here, really reminded me a lot of the foam that was in the Rebel, specifically Rebel version 3, maybe a little bit like the foam that was in Rebel version 2. And while that's the foam that I thought of first when I was testing this shoe, I do think that there's some difference between the foam that was in the Rebel version 2 and 3 and the foam that's in the Sonic 7. I feel like the hover foam in the Sonic 7 is a bit more firm and also a bit less responsive. And so I'm not getting quite as much of squish, and I'm not quite getting quite as much of a decompression, that springiness that I'm looking for. And so overall, I feel like between the midsole foam and the way that the upper is like very loose, almost too unstructured, the whole thing feels a little bit cheap. Now, I didn't know the price of this shoe while I was doing my run testing, but I couldn't help but think that this was probably, or at least hopefully based on what I was feeling, I think this was more in the budget shoe type of category. I enjoyed the sensations that I felt while running in the shoe, but it never felt premium. It doesn't feel like it's a flagship shoe to me, but I don't think it's trying to be. Before we wrap up the video, let's take a moment and zoom out and let's see where the Sonic 7 fits within the broader Under Armour lineup. Now, I think the first thing that I want to say is there are a lot of shoes that Under Armour makes, and for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to go over 3 main categories of shoes today. And whenever I talk about a brand's rotation or their lineup, I always like to start with the Daily Trainer, and from Under Armour, that is the shoe we've been talking about, that is the Sonic 7. That's going to be the shoe that you reach for most days, for most of your runs. Now, if you want to do a faster workout or if you want to race, then the shoe that you're looking for from Under Armour is the Velocity Elite. This is a shoe that has some of their flow foam, which is rubberized, so you don't need a separate rubber outsole, and it has PEBA and a carbon fiber plate. And so this is something that you would reach for any time you are trying to go fast. And for days where you want to slow it down and be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more cushioned, they have a shoe called the Infinite Elite. Now, this is a beaded TPU foam. It has a very tall stack height, and there's a bit more cushioning in the heel cup here. Although, again, here, I think they did a very good job of not letting it get too puffy. And so this is kind of like the 3 main shoes that I'm liking from Under Armour right now. Now let's wrap up the video by going over the buying guide, and we'll also discuss some alternatives. The Sonic 7 brings a respectable daily training experience to the Under Armour lineup. It's not a groundbreaking shoe, but it's a shoe that Under Armour desperately needed. And while it doesn't perform quite as well and doesn't feel quite as nice as some of the other shoes I generally prefer to run in, at $110, I think it delivers an excellent performance to price ratio. It's one of the best budget shoes I've run in a long time. But let's also take a look at some of the alternatives out there, because the budget category can be pretty fierce when it comes to competition. Now, the first shoe that I want to talk about when it comes to alternatives to the Sonic 7 isn't exactly a budget shoe, but I think in a lot of ways it kind of is addressing some of the same kind of check boxes. Now, and that shoe comes from Adidas. This is the Adizero SL2. Now, this shoe is a little bit on the cheaper side, but I think it kind of is in between budget and flagship when it comes to pricing and what you're getting in the shoe. There is a lot of regular Light Strike that's more of a standard EVA type of foam, but inside of that Light Strike, there's a little puck of Light Strike Pro, which is their racing foam. And that really elevates the shoe into something that's a lot more fun. But like the Sonic 7, the Adizero SL2 is a shoe that I've been generally liking for some of my shorter easy runs, or some of my easy runs that might have a little bit of pace pickups in them, whether that's strides or a light tempo run or a light fartlek. So I would use the 2 shoes very similarly, and I love the styling of this shoe. So this is a shoe that if I want a shoe that's going to look good both for the run and for afterwards, the Adizero SL2 is something that's high on the list for shoes that I'll pick up. And I feel like that's exactly what Under Armour is trying to do with the Sonic 7. Now, when it comes to that feeling that the Sonic 7 isn't quite as nice, the Adizero SL2 has what the Sonic 7 is missing. The fit and finish is a lot nicer. The materials that they've chosen just feel a little bit better when it comes to a shoe that I think looks good and performs well. You are going to be paying a premium for that though, because the Adizero SL2 comes in at $130. Now the next shoe that I want to talk about delivers what I think is the closest experience to what the Sonic 7 delivers on a lot of levels, and that's from Atreyu. This is their daily trainer. This is a shoe that has a relatively low stack height and a supercritical foam that feels almost identical to the supercritical foam that's in the Sonic 7. It also has an extremely uncomplicated upper. There's no overlays, there's no gussets, there's no reinforcements. It's just a very comfortable, well-fitting upper, just like the Sonic 7 has. And I also feel like this is a shoe that I don't like to take for some of my longer runs, but for runs that are about an hour or less, I feel like this shoe really works. And the Atreyu also comes in at a budget price of $110. Now, this shoe is not really for sale anymore. It's been a long time since I think inventory has been out, but there is a version 2 coming, and so I did want to bring that up. So those are my thoughts on the Under Armour Sonic 7. Very happy to see Under Armour getting back into the performance running game. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any other questions about this shoe or any of the other shoes that I talked about today, or better yet, stop by the live streams that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. Love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?